Welcome to tonight's journey through time. Before we begin, find a comfortable position, let your shoulders relax, and take a deep breath. Tonight, we are leaving the modern world behind to witness the birth of legends. We are going to explore the 7 wonders of the ancient world, focusing not just on their beauty, but on the monumental effort of their creation. We will travel to the sun-drenched banks of the Nile, the high walls of Babylon, and the marble temples of Greece. In this episode, we'll uncover the construction processes of these masterpieces, how ancient engineers moved massive stones, how artisans carved colossal statues, and how human ambition reached for the sky thousands of years ago. There is no rush, only the steady rhythm of history. So, close your eyes, let your mind drift back to the ancient Mediterranean, and let the story of these great wonders lead you into a peaceful rest. Close your eyes and let the world around you fade into a soft, distant hum as we embark on a journey across the vast, golden oceans of time. Imagine your breath slowing down, matching the steady, ancient rhythm of the earth itself. We are traveling back, far beyond the reach of modern memory, until the cities of today dissolve and the horizon opens up to reveal the desert of Egypt, as it appeared 4,500 years ago. We are standing on the edge of the Giza plateau in the year 2560 BC, witnessing the birth of the Great Pyramid, a monument built not just of stone, but of human patience and celestial alignment. Before a single block of limestone was ever moved, there was only the silence of the desert and the careful observation of the stars. Imagine the royal architects, the masters of secret knowledge, standing in the absolute stillness of the night. They are watching the indestructible stars, those celestial lights that never set below the horizon, with incredible focus. They use simple but precise tools, the Merkhet and the bait, to track the movement of the stars, marking the exact position of true north on the rocky ground. They do not rush. They know that the foundation of eternity must be perfect. They spend months refining these lines until the 4 sides of the future pyramid are aligned to the cardinal points with a precision that will baffle scientists for millennia to come. Once the layout is etched into the earth, the massive task of preparing the foundation begins. The plateau is not naturally flat, but the architects require a level surface, as calm as a still lake. Visualize the workers carving a network of shallow interconnected trenches into the hard bedrock, creating a vast grid that spans 13 acres. They fill these channels with water diverted from the Nile, creating a massive, shimmering mirror. By marking the water's level on the stone walls, and then draining it away, they know exactly where the rock needs to be chiseled. Thousands of men work in a steady, melodic harmony, their copper tools striking the stone in a heartbeat, clink clink, until the entire base is perfectly leveled, ready to support the millions of tons that will soon rise toward the sky. Now, let the sound of the water fade and listen to the rhythmic echoes coming from the nearby quarries. The Giza plateau itself serves as the primary source of stone. Here thousands of skilled craftsmen, men who are fed on fresh bread and beer, living in organized villages nearby, labor in rotating shifts. They are not the slaves of myth, but respected workers who take pride in their contribution to the pharaoh's legacy. Imagine the stonecutters driving wooden wedges into the natural fissures of the yellow limestone. They pour water over the wood, and as it expands, the rock groans and eventually snaps with a deep, satisfying thud. Each block, weighing as much as a modern car, is then meticulously shaped into a rough cube. Over 2 million of these stones will be needed, and each one is moved with a meditative, slow-motion grace. Because the wheel has not yet been introduced for such heavy work, the Egyptians rely on the physics of the earth. The blocks are placed onto massive wooden sledges, and as hundreds of men pull in unison, a worker at the front pours water onto the sand. This simple act turns the sand into a slick, lubricated surface, allowing the heavy sledge to glide with surprising ease. It is a slow, steady parade of stone, a river of limestone flowing toward the rising monument. but the local stone is only the core. For the inner sanctums, the pharaoh demands the strongest and most beautiful material in the land. This requires a journey 500 miles to the south, to the granite quarries of Aswan. Visualize the great wooden barges, built from sturdy cedar planks, floating silently down the Nile during the flood season. On their decks sit colossal slabs of red granite, some weighing as much as 80 tons. The river is the lifeblood of this project, a liquid highway carrying the heart of the mountain to its new home. When these barges arrive at the Giza docks, the true test of engineering begins. These massive granite beams are destined for the king's chamber, deep inside the pyramid. As the structure grows taller, the ramp's vast embankments of sun-dried brick and rubble spiral around the pyramid like a giant staircase. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke from the workers' fires and the fine white dust of carved stone. Inside the rising mountain, the architects are building the grand gallery, a soaring, corbelled hallway where the stones overlap with such precision that not even a blade of grass could fit between them. Above the king's chamber, they build 5 relieving chambers, hollow spaces designed to redistribute the immense weight of the stone above, ensuring the ceiling never collapses. It is a masterpiece of hidden engineering, meant to endure for thousands of years in the silent dark. As 2 decades pass, the pyramid reaches its full height, but it does not yet look like the weathered monument we see today. For the final touch, the builders bring in the Tura limestone, fine, snowy white stones polished until they shine like jewels, starting from the very top and working their way down. The craftsmen fit these casing stones so perfectly that the pyramid appears to be a single, seamless, brilliant, white mountain. At the very peak, they place the pyramidion, the capstone, which is likely covered in a layer of shimmering gold, or electrum. As the sun rises over the Nile, the tip of the pyramid is the first thing to catch the light, glowing like a second sun and reflecting a beam of brilliance across the valley for miles. The work is finally done. The ramps are dismantled, the tools are packed away, and the thousands of workers return to their homes. The Nile recedes to its banks, and a deep, ancient quiet returns to the plateau. The Great Pyramid stands alone in the moonlight, a shimmering silver triangle against the velvet black sky. It is a monument to what can be achieved through harmony, patience, and the steady passage of time. As you drift deeper into rest, imagine the cool desert wind brushing against those polished white walls. The stars above Giza are the same stars that watch over you now. The world is still, the desert is vast, and the Great Pyramid remains in its eternal, peaceful silence, watching over the centuries as you fall into a deep and effortless sleep. Take a deep breath and let the quiet of the night settle around you as we leave the golden sands of Giza and travel through the Fertile Crescent to the bustling heart of Mesopotamia. Imagine the air becoming cooler and more humid as we approach the legendary city of Babylon. We are standing in the year 600 BCE, during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II, above the high blue-glazed walls of the Ishtar Gate. A vision emerges that seems to defy the very laws of the desert, a soaring mountain of emerald green, rising terrace by terrace into the hazy sky. This is the construction of the Hanging Gardens, an engineering marvel born from a king's love for his queen, Amidis, who longed for the rugged, forested mountains of her Persian homeland. The construction of such a wonder in the flat, arid plains of Babylonia was an unprecedented challenge that required a complete reinvention of architectural logic. To build a mountain where there was none, the Babylonian engineers first had to create a massive structural skeleton, capable of supporting thousands of tons of wet earth and fully grown trees. Visualize the laborers, beginning with the foundations, not of simple mud brick, which would crumble under moisture, but of rare and expensive hewn stone. In a land where stone was a luxury, its use here was a statement of eternal intent. They constructed a series of tiered, vaulted arches, one atop the other, rising like a giant staircase. Each level was supported by massive hollow pillars, some reaching 60 feet into the air. These pillars were not just structural. They were designed to be filled with deep soil, allowing the roots of the largest trees to reach down into the heart of the structure, mimicking the natural depth of a mountainside as the stone skeleton rose. The engineers faced their greatest enemy, water. To keep a forest alive in the desert, constant irrigation was required, but that same water threatened to seep into the palace below, rotting the brickwork and destroying the royal chambers. The solution was a sophisticated, multi-layered waterproofing system that was centuries ahead of its time. Imagine the rhythmic work of the craftsmen as they laid the first layer above the stone beams. A thick mat of reeds woven together and sealed with bitumen, a natural black tar that bubbled in the Mesopotamian sun. Above this, they laid 2 courses of baked bricks cemented with gypsum, and finally, a layer of hammered lead sheets. This metallic shield was the secret to the garden's survival, ensuring that every drop of water remained in the soil, nourishing the roots without ever touching the architecture beneath. Now, visualize the immense logistical effort of filling these terraces. Thousands of workers moved in a slow, steady stream from the banks of the Euphrates, carrying baskets of rich, dark, alluvial soil. This earth was specifically mixed with organic matter to retain moisture in the searing heat. Once the soil was deep enough, the transformation began. Exotic plants and massive trees were transported from the furthest reaches of the empire on specialized river barges. Imagine the sight of Lebanon cedars, cypress trees, and flowering fruit trees being hoisted up the ramps by systems of pulleys and sledges. Date palms, ebony, and fragrant shrubs were planted in thick groves, creating a vertical forest where the branches of one level would hang over the edge of the one below, creating the hanging effect that gave the wonder its name. The true heartbeat of the construction, however, was the hidden irrigation machinery that fought against gravity. Deep within one of the massive corner pillars, a hidden shaft housed a colossal mechanical system, most likely a chain pump or a series of wooden screws. Picture the scene in the cool shadows of the inner structure. Pairs of oxen moving in a slow, endless circle, turning a massive wooden wheel. This wheel drove a chain of bronze buckets that dipped into a reservoir fed by the Euphrates. As the chain moved upward, the buckets rose through the darkness of the pillar, emerging at the very top terrace to spill their cool, life-giving water into a grand header tank. From this height, the water was channeled into a network of stone-lined rills and small canals that meandered across every level. You can hear the soft, musical sound of the water as it trickles from the highest peak, spilling over artificial cliffs in gentle waterfalls, cooling the air by several degrees and creating a lush microclimate where hummingbirds and butterflies began to thrive in the middle of the desert. As the project neared completion, the gardens became a sensory masterpiece. The harsh sunlight of Mesopotamia was filtered through layers of dense foliage, creating a world of dappled shade and emerald light. The scent of damp earth combined with the perfume of thousands of blooming flowers, jasmine, roses, and lilac drifting over the palace walls and into the city beyond. The gardens were not just a static monument. They were a breathing, growing entity that required constant care and the rhythmic movement of the water pumps. The engineering was so seamless that to an observer standing below, it looked as though a lush mountain had simply floated down from the heavens to rest upon the rooftops of Babylon. Now, as the sun sets over the Euphrates, the heat of the day finally breaks. The gardens are bathed in a soft, golden glow, and the sound of the evening breeze rustling through the high cedar branches is like a long, slow sigh. The oxen are led away. The water in the canals settles into a quiet shimmer, and the scent of night-blooming flowers fills the air. The massive stone vaults hold the weight of the forest in a steady, eternal embrace. Everything is balanced. Everything is at rest. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine yourself walking along the highest terrace of Babylon, the cool mist of a waterfall touching your skin, and the quiet, steady pulse of the ancient river below leading you into a deep and peaceful slumber. As you settle into your most comfortable position, let the weight of the modern world dissolve into the soft shadows of your room. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, and then leave your body, carrying with it every lingering thought of the day. We are embarking on a journey of immense scale and quiet beauty. Our destination is the sacred grove of Olympia. In the year 435 BCE, the air here is different. It is thick with the scent of pine needles, wild olive trees, and the faint, metallic tang of bronze being worked in distant forges. This is the heart of the Peloponnese, a sanctuary of peace where the greatest athletes of the ancient world gather. But tonight, we are not here for the games. We are here to witness the slow, meditative birth of a god, the construction of the statue of Zeus, the king of the gods, a masterpiece of gold and ivory that will stand as a testament to human devotion for centuries. The workshop of the master. Imagine walking through the Altes, the sacred precinct. The sun is low on the horizon, casting long, golden fingers across the marble columns of the Temple of Zeus. Just a few paces from the temple stands a building of a different sort, the Ergast, the workshop of the master sculptor Phidias. This workshop is an exact replica of the inner sanctum of the temple, designed so that every measurement, every shadow, and every ray of light would fall upon the statue exactly as it would in its final home. As you step inside, the temperature drops. The air is cool and smells of cedar wood, damp clay, and the sweet, heavy scent of olive oil. The workshop is a cathedral of industry. There is no frantic pace here. Instead, there is a rhythmic, hypnotic sound of craftsmanship. You hear the soft scrape of bone being polished and the delicate clink of hammers against gold leaf. Phidias stands at the center, a man of quiet intensity, surrounded by a small army of specialized artisans, joiners, goldsmiths, ivory carvers, and painters. They are not just building a statue, they are assembling a mountain of divinity, the skeleton of the god. The construction begins with the invisible. Before the gold and ivory can be applied, a massive internal skeleton, or armature, must be raised. This is the foundation of the wonder. Imagine giant beams of seasoned cypress and cedar, chosen for their resistance to rot and their natural strength. The carpenters work with ancient precision, joining these massive timbers with mortise and tenon joints, securing them with bronze bolts. This wooden core is not a rough shape. It is a meticulously carved anatomical map of a seated man, towering 40 feet into the air. If you were to look at it now, it would look like a giant, ghostly figure made of dark wood, a silent giant waiting for its skin. Every muscle, every fold of the seated posture is carved into the wood. The engineers have calculated the weight distribution perfectly, ensuring that the throne can support the thousands of pounds of precious materials that will soon be draped over it. There is a profound stillness in this wooden giant, a promise of the majesty to come. The chryselephantine mystery, the skin of ivory, the most delicate part of the process, is the chryselephantine technique, the marriage of gold, chryses, and ivory. In the corners of the workshop, you see large tusks of elephants, brought from the distant lands of Ethiopia and India. But an elephant's tusk is curved and small compared to the size of a god's limb. Phidias uses a secret, meditative process to flatten the ivory. The tusks are soaked for weeks in vinegar and mandragora root until they become soft and pliable, like thick leather. Once softened, the ivory is unrolled into large, flat sheets. These sheets are then laid over the wooden muscles of the statue's arms, chest, and face. Visualize the artisans using fine pumice stone and olive oil to polish the ivory until the seams between the sheets disappear. The surface becomes warm, translucent, and glowing, mimicking the soft texture of human skin. Under the flickering lamplight of the workshop, the ivory skin of Zeus begins to look alive, as if a pulse might soon begin to beat beneath the surface. It is a slow, patient labor, requiring thousands of hours of sanding and buffing, until the ivory is as smooth as the surface of a still pond. The garments of gold while the ivory carvers work on the flesh. The goldsmiths are busy creating the god's wardrobe. They are working with hundreds of pounds of pure, hammered gold. This is not solid gold, which would be too heavy and soft, but rather thin, hammered plates of gold leaf, meticulously shaped over clay molds. Imagine the robe of Zeus, a massive, flowing garment that drapes over his shoulder and covers his lap. The gold is not plain. It is embossed with intricate patterns of lilies and small animals, symbols of the natural world over which Zeus presides. Each lily is a work of art in itself, polished until it reflects the torchlight like a mirror. The gold plates are attached to the wooden frame using small, invisible silver pins. As the robe grows, the statue begins to radiate light, casting a warm golden glow across the entire workshop. The sound of the gold beaters is a steady, rhythmic thump, 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 a heartbeat that echoes through the wooden scaffolding. The throne of ebony and gemstones, Zeus does not stand. He sits upon a throne that is a wonder in its own right. The throne is built of ebony, a wood so dark and dense it looks like midnight stone, and inlaid with ivory, gold, and precious gemstones, like emeralds and onyx. Visualize the detail of the throne's legs. They are carved with scenes of victory and myth, sphinxes carrying off children, the slaughter of the children of Niobe, and figures of Nike, the goddess of victory, dancing at the corners. The craftsmanship is so fine that you could spend hours looking at a single square inch of the wood. The ebony provides a dark, grounding contrast to the brilliance of the gold and the softness of the ivory. Every gemstone is polished to a dull glow, meant to catch the light in a way that feels mystical rather than gaudy. The throne is not just a seat. It is a cosmic pedestal, connecting the earth to the heavens. The assembly in the cellar. After years of labor in the workshop, the statue is moved, piece by piece, into the cell of the inner room of the temple of Zeus. The atmosphere here is one of heavy, sacred silence. The air is cooler here, protected by the thick limestone walls of the temple. The assembly is a feat of engineering, using systems of pulleys, ropes, and wooden cranes. The massive wooden sections are lifted and bolted together. The seams are hidden with the final layers of gold and ivory. Finally, the head of Zeus is placed atop the shoulders. His hair and beard are made of solid gold, flowing in heavy, sculpted curls. His eyes are made of precious stones, perhaps onyx or deep blue glass, staring out with a look of eternal calm authority. In his right hand, he holds a figure of Nike, made of ivory and gold. In his left, a scepter topped with an eagle, the wood inlaid with every metal known to man, the pool of reflection to preserve the ivory in the humid climate of Olympia. Phidias adds one final, brilliant touch. The floor in front of the statue is paved with black marble and surrounded by a low rim of white limestone. This basin is filled with pure, golden olive oil. Imagine the scene now. The temple is dark, save for the light coming through the great door. The olive oil serves two purposes. Its vapors keep the ivory from cracking in the heat, and its surface acts as a dark, liquid mirror. As you stand at the entrance, the statue is doubled. You see the golden god towering above you, and you see his shimmering reflection in the dark pool at his feet. The reflection ripples slightly with the breeze, making the god seem as though he is breathing, shifting, and watching over the sanctuary. The silence of the god. The work is finished. The artisans have left, the hammers are silent, and the dust has settled. The statue of Zeus now sits in the center of the temple, so large that the poets say, if he were to stand up, he would unroof the temple. But he does not stand. He sits in a state of ataraxio, perfect, undisturbed calmness. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine the quiet of the temple at night. The only sound is the occasional drip of oil or the rustle of an owl in the rafters. The golden robe of the god glows faintly in the moonlight filtering through the high openings. The ivory skin is cool and smooth. The eyes of the king of the gods look out over the valley of Olympia, protecting the peace of the land. Feel yourself sinking into that same peace. The immense labor, the years of carving, the hammering of gold has all led to this moment of absolute stillness. The world outside the temple continues its busy pace, but here, time has stopped. You are safe in the shadow of the wonder. Let the image of the golden god and his reflecting pool fade into a soft, hazy light. The air is cool, your breath is steady, and the ancient silence of Olympia is pulling you down into a deep, dreamless, and restorative sleep. As you prepare for a night of deep, restorative rest, let the weight of the day fall away like autumn leaves. Take a long, slow breath, feeling the cool air travel through you, calming your mind and relaxing your muscles. Tonight, we are leaving the modern world behind to travel to the western coast of Asia Minor, to the legendary city of Ephesus in the year 550 BCE. The air here is soft and salty, carried by a gentle breeze from the Aegean Sea. This is a place of immense wealth, philosophy, and art. We are here to witness the construction of a temple so vast and beautiful that it was said to outshine the sun itself, the Temple of Artemis. Known to the ancients as the Artemis. This was not merely a building. It was a marble forest, a sanctuary of 127 colossal columns that took over 120 years to complete. Imagine the scale of such a project, a construction that spanned generations, where grandfathers taught their grandsons the secrets of the stone, the foundation in the marsh. An engineering miracle. The story of the temple begins with a paradox. Most great structures are built upon solid rock, but the architects, Chersophon and his son Medellin, chose a marshy swamp near the mouth of the Kaista River. To the casual observer, this seemed like madness, but it was a stroke of engineering genius. They knew that Ephesus was prone to earthquakes, and a rigid foundation on hard rock would eventually crack. By building on the soft, yielding marsh, the temple would act like a ship on the sea, absorbing the tremors of the earth without breaking. Imagine the silence of the marsh at dawn, broken only by the rhythmic thud of wooden piles being driven into the mud. Thousands of workers labored to create a foundation that could support the weight of a mountain of marble. They dug deep into the silt and laid down layers of charcoal, followed by thick fleeces of wool. Visualize this hidden layer, a bed of charcoal and wool, miles of it, creating a flexible, waterproof cushion. This was the temple's secret heart, a soft, resilient base that allowed the massive structure to float above the unstable earth. As you think of this foundation, let your own body feel that same sense of being supported, as if you are resting on a cloud that yields to your weight and keeps you safe. The journey of the stone, the white marble of Bellevith, marble for the temple, came from the quarries of Bellevue, several miles away. This was not just any stone. It was a pure, dazzling white marble that seemed to hold the light of the moon. But moving stones that weighed over 40 tons across the soft Anatolian soil was a monumental task. Traditional carts would sink into the mud, and wheels would shatter under the pressure. Chersophon designed a solution that was as elegant as it was simple. Instead of placing the stones on carts, he turned the stones themselves into wheels. Imagine a colossal marble cylinder, intended to be a piece of a column. The workers hammered iron pivots into the center of each end of the stone and attached them to a massive wooden frame. Visualize the scene, teams of oxen, hundreds of them, pulling these giant wooden frames. The marble columns rolled slowly across the landscape like great rollers, smoothing the path before them. The sound was a low, steady rumble, a deep, grounding vibration that echoed through the valley. This was the slow, patient pulse of progress. There was no hurry. The stone moved at its own pace, a rhythmic and inevitable journey from the mountain to the sea. The forest of columns, artistry and scales. The stones arrived at the site. The temple began to rise. This was the first great building to be constructed almost entirely of marble. It featured 127 Ionic columns, each standing over 60 feet tall. To stand in the center of the construction site was to be in a marble forest. But these were not plain pillars. The Temple of Artemis was unique because the lowest sections of the columns, the columnae calato, were intricately carved with life-sized figures in high relief. Imagine the sculptors, perched on wooden scaffolding, their chisels moving with the delicacy of a feather. Hear the sound of the workshop, the light, musical ping-ping-ping of hammers on fine chisels. They carved processions of gods, heroes, and priests into the base of each pillar. The king of Lydia, Croesus, the wealthiest man in the world, donated many of these columns. Each one was a masterpiece, a gift to the goddess of the hunt. Visualize the detailed folds of the marble robes, the serene faces of the statues, all polished until they felt as smooth as silk. The marble was so white, and the carvings so fine that at night, under the light of a full moon, the columns seemed to glow with an inner light. The miracle of the lintel. Most difficult moment of the entire construction was the placement of the architreva, massive horizontal beams that rested atop the columns. The largest of these, the central lintel, weighed nearly 30 tons. It had to be lifted 60 feet into the air and placed with perfect precision. Chersiphron and Medellins struggled for days. No matter how they used their cranes and pulleys, the massive stone would not settle into its place. Legend tells us that Chersiphron was so distraught that he considered ending his own life, fearing his masterpiece would remain unfinished. In the quiet of the night, as the architect fell into a troubled sleep, it is said that the goddess Artemis herself appeared. She assured him that the temple would be finished. When he awoke at dawn, he found that the massive stone had settled perfectly into place under its own weight, aided by the gentle shifting of the sand ramps. Imagine that moment of relief, the silence of the morning, the sun hitting the perfectly seated stone, and the realization that the impossible had been achieved. This is the peace of completion, the feeling that even the heaviest burdens will eventually find their place and settle into stillness. The interior, the home of the goddess inside, the forest of columns, lay the cella, the inner sanctum. The roof was made of massive cedar beams, carrying the scent of the forest into the heart of the marble temple. The ceiling was adorned with gold and silver, reflecting the flickering light of the eternal lamps. At the center stood the cult statue of Artemis Ephesus. She was not the slender huntress of later Greek myth, but an ancient, multifaceted goddess of fertility and protection. Her statue was made of dark wood, perhaps ebony or cedar, and adorned with countless breasts or bull testes, symbolizing the overflowing abundance of nature. She was covered in gold jewelry and surrounded by the smell of burning incense and fresh pine branches. Visualize the interior. The air is cool, the light is dim, and the scent is an intoxicating mix of cedarwood, frankincense, and the sea. It is a place of absolute sanctuary. Outside, the city of Ephesus is a bustling hub of trade, but inside these walls, time does not exist. There is only the steady, protective presence of the goddess and the silent strength of the marble. The eternal legacy of the Temple of Artemis was destroyed and rebuilt several times, most famously after the fire set by Herostratus, who sought fame through destruction. But the Ephesians simply built it again, even larger and more beautiful than before. It stood for centuries as a beacon of beauty and a refuge for those seeking peace. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine the ruins of the temple as they are today, single columns standing in a quiet, grassy field near the sea. The storks build their nests atop the marble, and the sound of the wind through the reeds is the same sound Chersiphron heard thousands of years ago. The marble has returned to the earth, but the spirit of the place remains. The forest of columns is still there in your mind, a white, shimmering sanctuary under the stars. The air is cool, the sea is calm, and the heavy marble lintels are perfectly at rest. There is nothing left to build, nothing left to do. You are safe within the marble forest. Let the image of the white columns fade into the darkness, and let the rhythmic sound of the Aegean waves pull you down into a deep, dreamless, and eternal sleep. As you settle deeper into your bed, let the world outside your window dissolve. Imagine the air turning warm and fragrant, carrying the scent of salt spray, blooming oleander, and the dry, sweet heat of a Mediterranean afternoon. We are traveling across the turquoise waters of the Aegean Sea to the city of Halicarnassus, on the southwestern coast of Asia Minor, in the year 353 BCE. This is the capital of Caria, a city of white stone and deep blue harbors, and tonight, we are here to witness the construction of a monument so grand that its name will forever become the word for every magnificent tomb built thereafter. The mausoleum, the vision of a king and the grief of a queen. The story of the mausoleum begins with Mausoleum, a ruler who was as ambitious as he was farsighted. He transformed Halicarnassus from a simple coastal town into a magnificent capital. But his greatest project was to be his final resting place. However, it was his wife, Artemisia too, who was also his sister, according to the customs of the Carian royalty, who oversaw the majority of its construction following his death. Imagine the atmosphere in the royal palace. The grief of Artemisia is not loud or frantic. It is a deep, silent, and creative force. She decides to build a tomb that is not just a grave, but a bridge between the earth and the heavens, a monument to a love that transcends death. To do this, she summons the greatest minds of the Greek world, the architects Pythias and Satyros, and the foremost celebrated sculptors of the age, Scopas, Leochares, Brioc, and Timotheus. Phase 1. The great foundation and the podium. The construction site sits on a hill overlooking the harbor, a strategic location where the monument can be seen by every ship entering the bay. Visualize the massive scale of the excavation. Thousands of workers are clearing the rocky hillside, creating a vast platform of green volcanic stone. The foundation is not a simple base. It is a massive, rectangular podium that rises nearly 60 feet into the air. This lower section is built of heavy blocks of blue limestone, faced with slabs of shimmering white Proconnesian marble. Imagine the sound of the stonemasons, the steady, rhythmic clink-clink-clink of thousands of chisels. The sound is not harsh. It is a heartbeat, a slow and steady pulse of creation that echoes through the city streets as the podium rises. The four master sculptors begin their work. Artemisia has assigned each of them one side of the monument, sparking a friendly but intense competition for perfection. Takes the east, Bryaxis, takes the north, Leo, takes the west, Timotheus, takes the south. They are carving a massive frieze that wraps around the entire base, depicting the Amazonomachi, the legendary battle between the Greeks and the Amazon warriors. Imagine the detail, the flowing marble hair, the tension in the sculpted muscles, the silent drama of stone horses mid-gallop. These sculptures are not flat. They are so deep and lifelike that in the moonlight, they appear to be moving, a slow-motion dance of history, frozen in white stone. Phase 2, the Ionic forest. Once the solid podium is complete, the architects, Pythias and Satyros, begin the second stage, the colonnade. Above the heavy base, they raise 36 slender Ionic columns, 9 on each side. Visualize these columns rising into the Aegean sky. They are made of the finest white marble, fluted with deep grooves that catch the shifting light of the sun. Unlike the heavy, brooding columns of the Parthenon, these Ionic pillars are graceful and light, topped with elegant scrolls, the volutes, that look like unfurling waves of stone. This middle section of the mausoleum creates an open, airy space that contrasts beautifully with the massive podium below. It is here, between the columns, that giant marble statues are placed, statues of ancestors, lions, and guardians. Imagine the scent of the sea breeze passing through this marble forest, cooling the stone and carrying the distant sounds of the harbor to the silent guardians of the tomb. Phase 3. The pyramid and the chariots. The columns are secured. The final and most difficult phase begins. The roof. Pythias, who was also a master mathematician, designed a roof that was unlike anything seen in Greek architecture. It is a massive, 24-step pyramid, rising steeply toward the clouds. Each step of the pyramid is a perfectly cut block of marble, fitted with such precision that the joints are invisible. Visualize the workers hoisting these massive blocks higher and higher. As the pyramid narrows, it reaches its crowning glory, a colossal marble chariot, known as the quadriga. This chariot is pulled by 4 massive marble horses, their nostrils flared as if breathing the mountain air. Standing in the chariot are the figures of Mausolus and Artemisia, carved on a scale that makes them look like gods. They are 10 feet tall, looking out over the city they built and the sea they commanded. The chariot is polished to such a high sheen that it catches the first and last rays of the sun, acting as a golden beacon for sailors far out at sea. The silent chamber within, deep inside the massive podium, protected by tons of solid stone, lies the burial chamber. This is the heart of the wonder. The walls are lined with white alabaster, and the floor is made of polished dark stone. In the center sits the sarcophagus, carved from a single block of rare marble. The air inside is perfectly still. There is no wind, no sound, and no light. It is a chamber of absolute peace. Artemisia, in her final days, would visit this space, finding comfort in the cool, silent embrace of the stone. It was said that she was so devoted to her husband that she mixed his ashes with her daily wine, wanting him to become a physical part of her. The mausoleum was the outward expression of this internal devotion, a mountain of marble, built from a single, quiet thought of love. The end of the work. A strange thing happened toward the end of the construction. Queen Artemisia passed away before the monument was fully finished. With their patron gone and the funding uncertain, the world expected the 4 master sculptors to pack their tools and leave, but they did not. Skopas, Liochares, Bryaxis, and Timotheus stayed. They realized that this monument was no longer just for a king or a queen. It was for the ages. They continued to work, for free, until every frieze was perfect and every lion was carved. They stayed for the glory of their art and the pursuit of perfection. When they finally finished, they stood back and looked at what they had created, a 140-foot-tall synthesis of 3 different cultures, Greek and Carian, all working in harmony. The mausoleum stood for over 1,500 years, surviving earthquakes and wars, a testament to the fact that while people pass away, the beauty they create remains. Fading into the Mediterranean night, imagine the mausoleum as it stands tonight in your mind. The sun has set over the Bodrum harbor, and the white marble is bathed in the soft, silver glow of a full moon. The 36 columns cast long rhythmic shadows across the podium. The marble horses of the chariot at the summit seem to be grazing on the starlight. The air is cool. The sound of the Aegean waves hitting the shore is a rhythmic lullaby. Hush, wash, hush. The massive stone blocks are cool to the touch, holding the silence of the centuries within them. There is no more carving to be done. The chisels are put away. The architects are at rest. Feel the same stillness that resides in the heart of that white marble chamber. Your body is heavy, like the limestone foundation, and your mind is clear and light, like the Ionic columns rising toward the sky. You are safe. You are at peace. Let the image of the great white tomb on the hill fade slowly into a hazy silver mist as you drift down into a deep, eternal, and restorative sleep. Close your eyes and let the world around you dissolve into a soft, hazy blue. Imagine the air turning warm and salt-kissed, carrying the scent of wild thyme, cedarwood, and the cooling stones of a harbor at dusk. We are traveling back to the year 292 BCE. to the island of Rhodes, a jewel of the Aegean Sea, where the sunlight seems to linger longer than anywhere else on Earth. Here, at the edge of a turquoise bay, a project of impossible scale is beginning. It is a project born not from the desire for conquest, but from the relief of peace. This is the birth of the Colossus of Rhodes, a bronze titan that would stand as a second sun, a monument to the god Helios, and a testament to the endurance of the human spirit, the echoes of war, and the choice of peace. Story of the Colossus begins in the silence that follows a great storm. For a year, the city of Rhodes had been under a terrifying siege by Demetrius Polybius, known as the Besieger. He brought with him the most fearsome war machines the world had ever seen, including the Helepolis, the City Taker, a 9-story ironclad tower that groaned as it moved across the sand. But the people of Rhodes held firm. When the siege was finally broken and Demetrius fled, he left behind his massive engines of war, abandoned on the shores like the skeletons of fallen giants. Imagine the citizens of Rhodes walking among the wreckage of the siege. Instead of letting the metal rot or using it for new weapons, they made a different choice. They decided to transform the instruments of death into a monument of light. They gathered the bronze armor, the iron shields, and the copper plating from the Helepolis. They summoned Chairs of Lindos, a master sculptor who had spent his life studying the proportions of the human body under the great Lysippos. They told him, "Build us a god that represents our freedom. Build us a sun that will never set." The foundation anchoring the Titan, the construction began not with bronze, but with the deep, cold earth. Chairs knew that a statue over 100 feet tall, the height of a modern 10-story building, could not simply stand on the sand. Visualize the laborers digging deep into the bedrock of the harbor's edge. They laid a foundation of massive, white marble blocks, each one cut with such precision that they fit together without mortar. Imagine the sound of the masons, the steady, rhythmic tink-tink of hammers on stone. This marble platform was the anchor for the Titan. It had to be heavy enough to withstand the fierce Mediterranean gales and the shifting of the tides. As the marble base was leveled, the first iron beams were brought to the site. This was the beginning of the statue's internal life, the skeleton that would hold the weight of a god, the iron spine and the heart of stone. The engineering of the Colossus was a miracle of its age. Most statues were hollow and fragile, but the Colossus was built like a mountain. At its center was a massive 3-pronged iron skeleton. Imagine the blacksmiths of Rhodes, working in shifts around roaring charcoal fires. The air is thick with the smell of scorched iron and the heat of the forge. They are hammering thick iron bars, as thick as a man's leg, and joining them with bronze rivets. But iron alone was not enough. To prevent the statue from swaying or toppling, Chairs devised a brilliant plan. As the iron frame rose, the interior was filled with massive blocks of stone. Picture the workers carrying these stones into the dark interior of the rising statue. These stones acted as ballast, lowering the center of gravity and making the statue as solid as a cliffside. As you lie there, imagine that same feeling of solidness in your own body. Your legs are like the marble foundation, your spine is like the iron skeleton, and your heart is as steady and calm as the stone core of the Titan. You are anchored. You are heavy. You are at peace. The casting of the bronze skin while the skeleton rose. The skin of the god was being prepared in a massive workshop nearby. This was the most labor-intensive part of the process. Chairs did not cast the statue in one piece. Instead, he used thousands of individual bronze plates. Visualize the casting pits. Large rectangular holes are dug into the sand and filled with fine, damp clay. Master artisans carve the negative shapes of muscles, shins, and fingers into the clay. Then, the crucibles are brought in. Imagine the liquid bronze, glowing a fierce, molten orange, being poured into the molds. The air shimmers with the heat. Once the bronze cools, it is removed and hammered into its final shape. Each plate was unique. Some were thick for the feet and legs, while others were thinner and more delicate for the torso and face. The plates were overlapping, like the scales of a great sea creature, so that the winter rains would roll off the surface and never reach the iron skeleton within. Imagine the sound of the assembly, the rhythmic, metallic clang-clang of hammers, driving bronze rivets through the plates, joining the god's skin to his iron ribs. The rising mountain, the earthen ramp. The most fascinating part of the construction was how they reached the top. There was no scaffolding in the ancient world, strong enough to hold workers 100 feet in the air. Instead, chairs used the earth itself. Imagine that, as each level of the statue was finished, the workers built a massive ramp of soil and sand around it. Over 12 years, the statue was slowly buried under a man-made mountain. To the people of Rhodes, it must have looked like a god was being born out of the earth, slowly rising from the dirt toward the clouds. Visualize the thousands of baskets of earth being carried up the ramps. The air on the mound is cooler, catching the breezes from the sea. From the top of this mountain of sand, the workers could look out over the entire island, seeing the white-sailed ships of the Aegean as they approached the harbor. They worked in the open air, under the watch of the very sun god they were building, the face of Helios, a crown of light. Finally, after a decade of labor, the work reached the head. This was the most sacred part of the project. Chairs spent months carving the face of Helios. He wanted the god to look not like a warrior, but like a guardian, calm, vigilant, and kind. The eyes of the colossus were made of polished gemstones or glass, designed to catch the first light of dawn. But the most iconic feature was the crown. Imagine 7 long, pointed rays of bronze, each over 6 feet long, radiating from the god's head like the rays of the sun. These rays were covered in thin sheets of gold. As the sun hit the gold-tipped crown, it would send a beam of light across the water, a signal to sailors that they were home. The face of the god was the last thing to be finished. When the final rivet was driven into the crown, the great task of removing the earth began. The revelation of the Titan Magen. The anticipation in the city as the thousands of tons of soil were cleared away. It took months of labor to unbury the god. As the sand fell away, the bronze skin was revealed, shimmering and polished to a mirror-like finish. When the last of the earth was gone, the colossus stood revealed in all its glory. It stood at the edge of the harbor, its bronze feet firmly planted on the marble base. One hand was raised to its brow, shading its eyes as it looked out toward the horizon, while the other held a flowing robe. The statue was so tall that ships passing into the harbor looked like tiny toys beneath its shadow. The bronze was a deep, rich gold brown, but over time, the sea air gave it a slight, ethereal greenish tint, as if the statue itself was a bridge between the earth and the sea. For 60 years, it stood as the tallest structure in the world, a sentinel of peace that could be seen for 40 miles. The eternal quiet of the harbor now, as you drift closer to sleep. Imagine standing at the base of that massive bronze foot, in the quiet of a Mediterranean night. The crowds have gone home. The hammers of the blacksmiths are silent. The only sound is the rhythmic, gentle wash of the waves against the marble quay. Hush. Hush. The colossus is warm to the touch, having soaked up the heat of the sun all day. The iron skeleton within is silent, holding the weight of the Titan in a steady, eternal embrace. High above you, the gold-tipped rays of the crown catch the silver light of the moon. The statue does not move. It does not speak. It simply exists, a monument to the idea that beauty can grow from the wreckage of war. Feel that same stillness entering your mind. The long years of construction are over. The work is done. The Titan is at rest. The harbor of Rhodes is a place of absolute sanctuary, protected by the bronze giant that watches over the dark waves. Let your breath match the slow, deep rhythm of the sea. The air is cool, your body is heavy and warm, and you are being pulled down into a deep, golden, and restorative sleep, watched over by the ancient light of the sun god. As you settle into your most comfortable position, let the weight of the modern world gently slip away. Imagine your bed as a vessel of perfect comfort, floating on the calm, dark waters of the Mediterranean Sea. Take a slow, deep, intentional breath. Feel the cool air fill your lungs, and as you exhale, feel your muscles soften from your shoulders down to your toes. We are traveling back over 2,000 years to the edge of the known world, to the city of Alexandria in Egypt during the reign of the Ptolemies. The air here is cool and carries the sharp, clean scent of sea salt and the faint, sweet aroma of cedarwood smoke. Tonight, we are here to witness the construction of the final wonder of the ancient world, a monument of light and stone that guided the world for over a millennium. The Pharos of Alexandria, the vision of the harbor bee for the lighthouse. There was only the dark, treacherous coastline. Alexandria was the intellectual capital of the world, home to the great library and the brightest minds of the age. Yet its harbor was a labyrinth of hidden reefs and shallow shoals. Imagine King Ptolemy, Isoter, standing on the shore, watching the white-sailed ships struggle to find their way in the moonless night. He envisioned a beacon, a guiding star made by human hands, to welcome the world to Egypt. The task was given to Sostratus of Cnidus, a brilliant architect and engineer. He chose the small island of Pharos, just off the coast, as the site for this monumental task. Visualize the island at Donaraki, limestone outcrop surrounded by the crashing waves of the Mediterranean. Thousands of laborers, stonemasons, and engineers gathered here, beginning a project that would take 20 years to complete. There is no rush in their work. There is only the rhythmic, steady pulse of creation, the foundation. Stones of the earth. The construction began with the foundation, which had to be strong enough to support a structure nearly 400 feet tall, the height of a modern 40-story building, while resisting the constant, corrosive battering of the sea. Imagine the divers descending into the clear, turquoise water, placing massive blocks of granite and limestone onto the seabed. These blocks were joined not with simple mortar, but with molten lead, poured into carved grooves to fuse the stones together into a single, unbreakable mass. Hear the sound of the masons on the shore, the steady, musical tink-tink-tink of hammers on white limestone. This limestone was brought from the nearby quarries of Mex, chosen for its brilliance and its ability to reflect the sun. As the foundation rose above the waterline, it formed a massive, square platform. Visualize the scale of this base, hundreds of feet wide, solid and unyielding. As you think of this foundation, feel your own body becoming just as heavy and grounded. You are safe, you are solid, and you are supported by the earth beneath you. The first tier, the square fortress of Pharos, was built in 3 distinct stages, each a masterpiece of geometry and logic. The first tier was a massive 4-sided square tower. Imagine the thousands of white limestone blocks being hoisted into place by great wooden cranes. These walls were thick and sloped slightly inward, giving the tower the appearance of an eternal fortress. Inside this square base, Sostratus designed a feat of logistics, a massive, spiraling ramp. This ramp was so wide and so gentle in its incline that teams of oxen and donkeys could walk all the way up to the higher levels, carrying the wood and oil needed for the great fire. Visualize the interior of the tower, cool, dim, and silent, save for the rhythmic clicking of hooves on the stone floor. The air inside smells of damp stone and the faint, dry scent of grain. It is a world of shadows and echoes, a sanctuary of stone that holds the heat of the Egyptian sun during the day and stays warm throughout the cool, Mediterranean night. The second tier, the octagonal graces, the square tower reached its full height. The second stage began, an elegant octagonal section. Why an octagon? Sostratus was a master of the wind. He knew that at such heights, the fierce Mediterranean gales could put immense pressure on a flat surface. The eight-sided design allowed the wind to flow around the tower, reducing its resistance. Imagine the masons carving the eight corners with mathematical precision. This section was narrower and more graceful than the base, rising like a marble-fluted column toward the sky. On the exterior, beautiful statues of bronze and stone were placed tritons with their conch shells, seemingly announcing the arrival of every ship. The white limestone was polished until it shone like a mirror. In the midday sun, the Pharos was so bright that it could be seen from the mainland as a shimmering pillar of light. Even before the fire was lit, the sound of the wind whistling through the octagonal corners is a low, soothing hum, a celestial flute that plays a constant, quiet melody for the city below. The third tier, the lantern and the mirror, the final stage, was the most sacred and technical, the circular lantern room. This was a cylindrical tower that housed the heart of the lighthouse. At the very top stood a colossal bronze statue, perhaps of Zeus Soter or Poseidon, overlooking the sea with a look of eternal vigilance. Inside the lantern room, the engineers installed the wonder's greatest secret, a massive, highly polished bronze mirror. Imagine the artisans working for months, polishing the bronze with fine sand and oil until its surface was as smooth as water. During the day, this mirror reflected the sun's rays, creating a beam of light that could be seen for 30 miles out at sea. At night, a great fire of resinous wood and oil was lit. Visualize the fire now, a deep orange glow flickering against the white stone. The mirror stood behind the flames, focusing the light into a powerful, concentrated beam that cut through the darkest fog and the heaviest rain. The smoke from the fire rose in a steady, dark column during the day, acting as a signal of its own. The fire was never allowed to go out. It was a rhythmic, living thing, tended by a brotherhood of keepers who moved in the shadows of the lantern room with quiet, practiced grace. The guardian of the sea for over 1,000 years. The Pharos stood as the guardian of Alexandria. It survived earthquakes, wars, and the rise and fall of empires. It was more than a lighthouse. It was a symbol of human knowledge and the desire to guide one another through the dark. Imagine standing at the base of the tower at midnight. The city of Alexandria is asleep. The great library is silent, and the only sound is the rhythmic wash of the waves against the Pharos Island. High above, the golden beam of the lighthouse sweeps across the dark velvet of the sea. It touches the crests of the waves, turning them into silver threads, before moving on in its eternal circle. The white limestone of the tower is cool and smooth under the moonlight. The great bronze statue at the top watches the stars, its metallic skin reflecting the pale light of the moon. Everything is in its right place. The engineering is perfect. The light is steady, fading into the light now as you drift closer to the edge of sleep. Imagine yourself at the very top of the Pharos, standing safely behind the stone parapet. The air up here is cool and fresh, carrying the scent of the open sea. You can see the lights of Alexandria fading one by one as the city settles into rest. The great fire behind you crackles softly, a warm and comforting sound. The massive bronze mirror is silent, doing its work with effortless precision. The world is vast, the sea is infinite, and you are protected by a mountain of white stone and a beacon of eternal light. There is no more work to be done. The ships are safe in the harbor. The sun will rise again in its own time, but for now, there is only the rhythmic sweep of the light and the deep, ancient silence of the Mediterranean. Feel your breath slowing down, matching the slow rotation of the lighthouse beam. Your body is heavy, your mind is light, and the Pharos of Alexandria is guiding you into a deep, peaceful, and restorative sleep. As our journey through the 7 wonders of the ancient world comes to a close, let the images of these monumental achievements linger softly in your mind. We have traveled across sun-drenched deserts, walked through lush, hanging forests, and stood beneath the shadow of bronze and marble giants. We have seen how human ambition, guided by patience and the steady rhythm of the seasons, transformed the raw elements of the earthstone, gold, ivory, and bronze into echoes of eternity. Think back once more to the Great Pyramid of Giza, still standing in its silent, desert majesty. Recall the cool mist of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the golden radiance of Zeus at Olympia. Remember the vast marble forest of the Temple of Artemis, the quiet devotion carved into the walls of the mausoleum at Helic, the bronze brilliance of the Colossus of Rhodes, and the steady, guiding light of the Pharos of Alexandria. These wonders were more than just structures. They were proof that when humanity works in harmony with time and nature, we can create something that outlasts our own brief lives. But now, the hammers are silent. The architects have laid down their scrolls, and the fires in the forges have cooled into embers. The history we have explored tonight is now a part of your dreams, a quiet landscape where you can wander without worry or haste. The world outside is still. The stars that watched over the builders of the ancient world are the same stars watching over you tonight. There is nothing left to solve, nothing left to build, and nowhere else you need to be. You have traveled through centuries. And now, it is time to return to the present, to the safety and warmth of your own rest. If you found peace in this journey through the ancient world, consider returning to our sanctuary of history whenever the world feels too loud. We will always be here, ready to guide you through the quiet corridors of the past. But for now, let the weight of these great monuments anchor you into a deep, restorative sleep. May your dreams be as vast as the desert and as calm as the moonlit Mediterranean. Thank you for wandering through time with me. Sleep deeply, sleep well, and good night.